So Steve's tweets were deleted, so I can't see what I was responding to here. But it goes on. He was talking about my generation. What you describe, and he was talking about safe space culture, and I say yes. Safe space culture is a byproduct of helicopter parenting, participation trophies, which is admittedly a trope and a cliche, but it holds some merit. Everyone is special, political correctness, and the ever expanding nanny state, and of course the modern religions like social justice that seek to control people and create order and purpose through authoritarianism. I then say meritocracy aches. So I don't really have much of a reference point for what Steve was saying, but I'll talk a little bit about this. The fact when you say that everyone is special, that means no one is special. If everything's evened out, we kind of exist, we live, as we were talking about earlier about pattern recognition, we live in a world where contrast is what really drives us and makes us more likely to make certain choices. We tend to go for the one that stands out, what stands out to us in the environment. We learn to do this over hundreds of thousands, millions of years of evolution. We know what to look for. We know which foods are safe and which colors are dangerous and different things like that. Again, this is not an exact science. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section below, but of course, we do have our pattern recognition. And meritocracy is based on some things being better than others. You do a good thing, you get a reward. You do a bad thing, you get a punishment. And without that system, you tend to break into chaos because you tend to break into the real idiocracy, the real reverse meritocracy. Idiocracy is reverse meritocracy. And people are not rewarded for good. They're rewarded for random. And they are punished for random. Or they're not rewarded and punished on a consistent basis, a continuous or basis with continuity. So, safe space culture. Safe space culture is a culture of weakness, meaning that I'm not trying to point the finger at anybody and say, well, you're weak. You're weak. We're trying to be as civil and as nice. We don't want to generate any hatred or animosity on this channel or anywhere else for that matter. We want to foster an environment where everybody can succeed and that the glass is half full. But safe space culture is just, it's how people have been cultured. They're never challenged as children, or if they're over-challenged and they're treated poorly, and they learn that reality is a certain way, it does translate. If they've never been challenged, when challenge appears, they're not ready for it. That's why I say get your your cognitive dissonance muscles nice and tight so that you can accept more incoming information and not just bounce it off without a second thought. If you bounce things off without a second thought, there's a good chance you're in a safe space culture. You've been insulated from any sort of criticism or any sort of dissent. You've been placed into a world where people agree with you and things are always friendly and nice and everyone's nice. And sometimes nice is, in a culture of nice, isn't always the best way forward. There are times when a little tough love is needed, a little kick in the butt to make sure we start to do the right thing and get better. And of course, right and wrong being subjective. Okay, helicopter parenting, when the parents swoop in and save the day every time, of course, you're going to have situations where, eventually the child says, where's the helicopter? Where's the helicopter, mom and dad? Or mom and mom? Or dad and dad? Or just mom or just dad? Whoever it might be. Hey, grandma. Hey, guardian. Whoever it might be. So they'll look around for that helicopter and it won't be there and they won't know what to do. They won't know what to do. So helicopter parenting can have its downsides. Participation trophies, everyone wins culture. Everyone wins, everyone is special. And that's simply not true. Okay? You need to fight to be special sometimes. You need to actually try to work, contribute. I don't believe in viewing people by by immutable characteristics. The groups that they're a part of, the people they associate with, I don't want to look at people by group in a collectivist way. I like to look at them by individuality, their independent view of the world, their character, their merit, their flaws. I like to look at that person and see how, give them credit where credit is due. And when you get into a mindset of participation trophies and everyone is special, it gets you used to this idea that, wait a second, why am I? And of course, a lot of children do eschew. They don't like the participation trophies. These are all general statements. These aren't meant to be about you specifically, but these are general observations. And of course, political correctness. We talk about the code that is PC, the code of things like social justice and censorship. What is acceptable, what words you can use, what associations you can have, who you can talk to, what thoughts you're allowed to have that are in that narrow Overton window. We've talked about that. What's politically correct, and how virtuous is it for us to be politically incorrect versus politically correct. And of course, we have an ever-expanding nanny state. We have a surveillance state. We have a welfare state. We have a state where almost no matter what, you can't fail. People do fail here and there, but there is a nanny state where they say, well, if you don't have a job, you get unemployment. And if you can't get unemployment or you can't get a job, you can get food stamps. Now, I'm not saying these are bad things. I'm saying these are just a part of the nanny state. The state takes care of us. We put money in, of course. We put money in through taxes and other means into things like Social Security and Medicare. We do have a somewhat socialized healthcare system already in some respects. And we do have we have social programs, and we have socialism in small doses across the U.S. government. A nanny state, of course, the state becomes the father. The state becomes the mother. If a woman has 4 children or a couple of children, and the father isn't in the picture, the state takes care of it to some degree. So we do have a situation where, no matter what, there's always that helicopter swooping in to save people. And while there may be many situations where that's a good thing, in the long term, there's no telling if it's good or bad. And it could be very individual. Like, what kind of behaviors are we encouraging? What kind of thoughts are we encouraging? And I don't like to be a moralist. I don't like to focus too hard on exactly how I would like things to be, because my view is very limited. I have bias, I have in-group preference, I have my window on the world, and I'm sharing that with you. And of course, everything I say might be right, or everything I say might be wrong, somewhere in between, but I think it's important for us to exercise our free speech and talk about these things. And of course, the modern religion of social justice, which breaks people up into groups largely by immutable characteristics: sex, gender, sexual orientation, race, and skin tone, things that we're born with that we can't change. Well, they'll break you up into Group A and Group B and say, well, Group A is being oppressed by Group B because of this one characteristic, and thus we must equalize, we must play Robin Hood. And the prophets of the modern religion of social justice come in and say, we are going to make this situation more holy. We are going to find equity and equality for all. Now, I believe in equal opportunity, and I think there are areas where the kind of altruistic racism that these people apply, these prophets and disciples of the modern religion apply, I think there's some cases where people have been historically disadvantaged and deserve a little help. That could be the case. There are people that in the past have experienced real oppression, but again, the problem is when you take events of hundreds of years ago and you frame today in the same exact way. We have come so far in these past few hundred years, and so many people believe, they're optimistic, they're positive that they can find equal opportunity. They just know that they have to change their mindset. They have to work on their skill stack. They have to work on whatever they can. Now, of course, they're at a disadvantage if they can't get education. So I say we should make education as affordable and accessible as possible. I believe in vocational schooling. I believe in internet schooling. And I believe in homeschooling. But I also do believe in things like charter schools. And if we do have a public school system, I believe in pre-K. And if we go with K through 12, and of course college, I do believe that those should be accessible and affordable to all. I think that scholarships should be based more on merit than on immutable characteristics. But we have to start young. Make sure you educate your children from a young age. And if they're homeschooled or they're outside of the public school system or outside of the institutional system, they won't be as influenced or hypnotized, brainwashed, or persuaded or proselytized into the modern religion where they separate people up into groups and then try to pretend that we're all just a number. How many victim points are you? How many intersectional points do you have? And that means that goes and points to how much privilege you have. How much privilege do you have? Huh? Of course, mind reading is impossible, and knowing just how advantaged or disadvantaged somebody is, it's all very subjective. You can't just look at somebody. You can maybe, if you talk to a linguist, you can maybe come to a conclusion about, what kind of background they have and how much pain they've suffered and what their challenges are in life. But in general, you can't just look at people by their face value. You can't judge a book by its cover. So I say that meritocracy aches when you start getting into this world where you don't look at merit. You don't look at merit. And of course, you might hear arguments that say, well, meritocracy isn't real, Jeff. Meritocracy is fake because of bias and nepotism. Well, two things. We're all biased, and we all have nepotistic tendencies. We help our friends and family before we help other people that aren't ourselves, our friends, or our family, right? That's bias and nepotism. Now, there is one other really good argument for nepotism. I know it's fun to come up with, good arguments for things that generally are viewed only as negative or positive, and try to open up the door to say that, hey, there's other sides to this story. With nepotism, you're usually hiring somebody that then, of course, owes you a favor. Now, again, people will say, well, that's not very meritocratic. You're going on a system of negotiation and bartering. That's true. That is true. You are doing that. But the fact is that almost everybody does that. Everybody has in-group preference, except maybe white liberals. But moving on. Everyone has in-group preference. Everybody has bias. So there's another thing, too. If you're hiring somebody for a high-level position, do you want to hire an unknown if you can avoid it? Say if you know somebody, a friend, a family member, that you can trust, that won't stab you in the back, that will do a good job for you, will put the effort in, okay? Wouldn't you want to select that person first? I'm talking just, we can talk irrationally or we can talk rationally, however we'd like to. But you would hire the person that you trust to do the job and that has consequences if they don't do it right. Now, yes, you have situations where someone takes their son, who might be a coke addict, for example, and puts them into a job at a company, say Burisma, where they might not be qualified, and you go, okay, well, that's just nepotism. This person isn't qualified, and this is reverse meritocracy because they don't have merit, and yet they're rewarded with this job and this position that's high paying. Yes, corruption happens. Corruption is real, okay, and it's happened in the Trump family. It's happened in the Biden family. It's happened to millions and millions of people because it's part of our irrational human experience. We don't go by, meritocracy is a beautiful thing, but it's an ideal. It's a system. And again, If you don't adhere to the system, yeah, you're going to have some problems. And the system isn't perfect because no human construct is. Okay, I talk in one of my other videos, my video about politics and epistemology and my advocacy. Check it out on my channel on BitChute and YouTube. And I go and talk about how, you know, perfection is a fallacy until you create a box, say 10 by 10, 100 squares. And if you can click the positive, you can click the vector positive on every one of those 100 squares, yes, you may have achieved perfection, but it's within a limited frame of 100 squares. So meritocracy, yeah, meritocracy is an ideal just like all of our other systems and ideologies and our goals. It's an ideal. But I do believe that, you know, somebody that knows what they're doing and has experience, you know, and if you know them and you know just what the work entails, and you think that, well, my son or my friend or my daughter might be the best fit for this, and the fact is that most people, when faced with this decision, well, I can hire, you know, it's not just one person making these decisions, it's millions. When, in most cases, if somebody says, well, I can hire my cousin, or I can hire this random person I don't know who's unproven, but my cousin, I know they've done a good job. In that case, nepotism is potentially virtuous. It might be unfair, but life isn't fair. It may be corrupt, but corruption is everywhere. With absolute power, you get corruption. Power breeds corruption.